Hi, everybody. Nicole here from Power Bespoke and joined by Richard Worrall from Network Auctions. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Nicole.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And to let you know, we were here on time, but nothing like a little bit of technical difficulties. I think it's Richard, everybody just excited being back on the market, being able to do things. Speaking of which, how would you describe week so far in one word?
Busy.
Yeah, so today is the first time that I've had to actually get dressed properly and go out and do viewings. The first time in 8 weeks. And it's been really, really good. So I think we woke up to the news on Wednesday morning that the property market is now open. And it was lovely being outdoors, actually, and with great weather today. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard. So you an auctioneer with Network Auctions. Okay, for everybody who is listening in live on the call and you have any questions, please, and if you can hear me, because that was part of our technical difficulties earlier, please pop me a thumbs up and let me know if you can hear me. I've got Georgie in the background as well helping me. And if you have any questions on this live or later, please pop it in the box and we're going to speak about the questions later. So, Richard, I've got if you see me looking this side, it's only because I've got my book with some notes here. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your time again. I have the first question for you. It is twofold. Okay. So it is, who are Network Auctions and how long have you been there? And also, you and I didn't meet via the traditional auction method. We met via committed transaction. That sounds a bit strange. We met via committed transaction, committed transaction method. So first question is, who are Network Auctions, and what is the difference between an auction and a committed transaction? Thank you.
Okay. So, Network Auctions, we are auctioneers, and when the world has been a normal place, we hold 6 what are called ballroom auctions every year at the Westbury Hotel in Mayfair. So, traditional auctioneers with a catalogue of properties, anything between 40 and 80 lots sold on one afternoon. That's what we do. We've been going for around 15 years. We are not Barnum Marcus, not Snables. We don't have catalogues of like 200, 250 lots. We're big enough to cope, small enough to care, whatever phrase you like to use. But we are there to service clients who need, I suppose what auctioneers do is they provide a service whereby sellers who have a need, desire for certainty and speed in their transaction. That's where auction comes in. It's the purest form of selling. When the auctioneer drops the gavel, that's a legal and binding agreement. The buyer pays a 10% deposit, and completion traditionally takes place 20 working days after the auction. So that's what we do. With regards to committed transaction, as a company, as auctioneers, we found that we were appraising a lot of stock to go to market for our partners, the estate agents like yourselves, the high quality agents throughout the UK who don't have their own auction department. Why don't estate agents have an auction department? Number one, it's specialised. 2, it's expensive, and the list goes on. But they're the main reasons why estate agents don't. However, lots of estate agents have clients who have a need for this speed and certainty that auction gives. So as a company, we have partnered all the way along with high quality agents such as yourselves to give their clients a route to market. However, we found that a lot of stock maybe wasn't quite priced attractively enough to go into the auction room, but was a good price reduction for the agents on private treaty. But it still didn't give the client the certainty that they needed from the auction transaction, the traditional auction transaction. So we came up with a committed transaction. We call it Network E, and it's a halfway house in between traditional auction and private treaty. So instead of when we drop the gavel, there being a 10% deposit paid on the committed transaction process, the buyer pays a £3,500 non-refundable deposit. It's enough money for there to be a very good solid commitment made by the purchaser. And more importantly, that money the purchaser puts down does come off the purchase price of the property. That's not a fee to Power Bespoke, it's not a fee to the auctioneers, it's part of the purchase price of the property. And it's called a conditional contract. So the purchaser then has 28 days in which to exchange contracts from the time that their offer is accepted. The legal work is provided beforehand, in the same way as an auction. So it's as I say, it's a halfway house in between traditional auction and private treaty. It gives certainty to the seller, much more certainty than private treaty, and it gives certainty to the purchaser, because when the two parties enter into the committed transaction, they are bound to deal only with each other. So the seller can't entertain other offers during that time, and they have to give the purchaser enough time to get their ducks in a row and exchange contracts in the time frame.
When I often meet applicants on a viewing for a property that's under being sold via the committed transaction method, and I've been doing quite a few of those with you in the last few years, and but initially I find myself having to explain a lot, because it's not, is it correct in saying that it's not the traditional and not really well known here in the UK, very popular abroad, is that correct?
I've got to be honest, I don't know about abroad, other than the different systems that are operating in different countries throughout the world. I mean, certainly if you look at Australia, I've spent a lot of time in Australia. Their system of buying, selling property is very different to here. You do commit, you do all your process first, you then make your offer on the property, and then you go forward with it. And there are financial implications if you don't proceed with it. In this country, most properties are sold by what we call private treaty. That's the traditional way of selling a property. And I think that you're absolutely right. When you're trying to explain to somebody, we're selling this property this way, it's different. But the most important thing, I think, from both parties' side is the buyers and sellers, they have security that they are dealing with each other at that point. And I don't think it's not a bad thing. In fact, I think it's a good thing from a purchaser's perspective to say, yes, I've thought very clearly about this. I've had a chance to have a look at the legal documentation. My solicitor's had a look at that as well. On the basis of me viewing the property, seeing that information, I'm happy to put my money where my mouth is, because I am committed to buying this property. If you went to a new homes developer, they would be taking a non-refundable deposit from you at the beginning anyway. So it just shows that you are willing to say, put your money where your mouth is. And that's what most sellers are after. They want commitment. If you know, I've been doing this job a long time, over 30 years now, just coming up 34 years. And if you ask any seller what the most frustrating thing about the way we buy and sell property in this country is that anybody can pull out on a private treaty basis at whatever point, and there is no financial compensation for anybody anywhere along the line. By taking that small amount of money at the beginning, it keeps those transactions together. It makes people resolve problems rather than find problems and then say, oh, do you know what, I don't want to go ahead with it. So yeah, that's
yeah, it. and it's you know, in private treaty sale, and looks, a lot of houses need to sell in that way as well. So in private treaty, it is done in good faith right up until exchange. Committed transaction, I've been trying to explain it to applicants who are very keen, and they'll say, oh, well, it works well for the seller. Well, actually, yes, it does, but it also works well from what I've seen from the buyer's point of view, because once the offer has been accepted and the deposit has been taken, that property becomes exclusive to you as the the buyer. Almost created a new word there. But you've heard of phrases of gazumping and things like that. But this is the commitment from the seller to the buyer saying, hey, thank you for this. And for this, you will get exclusivity for 28 days. So it's fantastic. Thank you.
I mean, I think the main thing is it keeps everybody focused. There is no doubt that if all parties in a transaction are very focused on what they are looking to achieve and the time frame in which they're looking to achieve it, then they will perform to that level. If it's open-ended, and it's not just about property transactions, you can apply that principle to a whole load of things in life. But if people are working to a time frame, everybody's agreed to it from the beginning, the chance of that happening is so much greater than if you just say, yeah, I'd like to do that, and we'll do it sometime.
Okay. Can everybody just give me a thumbs up in the chat that you can hear us okay? That'll be fantastic. Okay, so the second question, well, not question, but experience I'd like to share with everybody, and obviously your feedback, because I worked with you on this transaction, was my first sale for 2020 was via committed transaction. It was the first viewing of 2020. It was exciting, probably the most exciting Thornton Heath has ever been, I would say. In 2020, on the 4th of January, it was a Saturday afternoon, and my colleagues Julie and Melanie helped me with the viewings. So it was Thornton Heath, and it was for a couple, an elderly couple who were moving on, needed to move on. So therefore we were able to sell this property via committed transaction. So it had no onward chain, and the result was phenomenal. So Richard, from your point of view, what do you think that we did right for this transaction?
I think the first thing was the pricing of the property is always key, and that doesn't matter how you're selling a property. But if you're going for a committed transaction process, as you did on this one, good pricing is the key. The property was there at a very attractive price, and then it was up to the individuals who viewed it to then make their decision as to what they were prepared to pay for it. Now, off the back of that, you got 10% above the quoted price for the client. It was agreed in the end at 330,000 off a guide price of 300,000. Now, the most important thing about that is not that the price paid was 330. It was paid at 330, and the buyer was prepared to make that commitment.
I think it was 360.
I do apologise. But the buyer committed to that process. That was the most important thing. If you'd have done an open day and it had just been done on private treaty, then you would probably have got the same figure. But at that point, all the buzz and stir that you've created around the property then starts to wane, because after the initial buzz and stir and the person makes an offer, then the private treaty process takes over, and then it goes as long as it takes to go through. Here, all the prospective purchasers, knew what they were entering into, which is, I make my best bid, and then I'm going to purchase this I'm going to exchange contracts on it in the next 28 days and pay that deposit.
What really helped was we had 60 applicants, registered applicants, turn up, and the property was marketed at offers in excess of 300,000. 60 people through the door who were the applicants, and each person brought along at least one family member. Some had 3 or 4. Obviously, we could never have done it during the lockdown period, and even now there are restrictions in place. But this was in January, and you mentioned the word buzz there, Richard, earlier. There most certainly was a buzz on that day. It was, you know, I've been in this I joined the company when the market was going through the Brexit period, and I've never felt that real buzz, and that was on the 4th of January, and it's like, wow, if this is what we can do in a good market, you know, definitely this is the right place. And I even felt a bit of the buzz today, just being out for the first time and on viewings. I'm also booked tomorrow. But back to the committed transaction, it was, we marketed at offers in excess of 300,000. We had a reserve of, you know, 330, and we achieved 360,000. You said earlier that I may have got that via private treaty. I'm not so sure. You know, it was priced. I knew what we could achieve for it, but I really think, and I'll give it to you, Richard, I think the committed transaction played a big part in that for their property.
Well, again, I think the thing is, you know, when you do that amount of viewings on a property, clearly, you know, there's going to be a crossover of people when you view, and that's what it's all about. From your perspective, you're there to get the best possible result for the seller.
Yeah.
And, you know, the people that were going to take it to the next level and bid on the property knew that there were other people involved, or potentially going to be involved. So it was down to them to make that commitment and go forward. There is no doubt that, yeah, going back to what you said before, we're not going to be able to do that now. Block viewings are out the question. However, there's a very you know, strong likelihood that you'll be doing block viewings in the same way as you're doing this now. You can do a Facebook Live to as many people as you want, and do that first virtual tour with you showing everybody the property. Then from that, it will then filter down to those people that then want to take it to a physical level viewing. And I think, you know, all agents and auctioneers are adapting. Yes, we are open for business, but the guidelines from government are really, really clear on this. It is safety first. It is safety before profit. We're taking baby steps at the moment, and no industry is going to come back in the same way as it did before. And our industry, we've been allowed to come out and conduct and transact business quite early on, one of the first industries to be released, which is fantastic. But we have an obligation to make sure that we do conduct business in the right way. It's great that you're out on viewings already, but I would hope, and I'm very sure this is the case with Power Bespoke, that your viewings are qualified. You're not just rushing off to a property because somebody wants to view it. This is now all about, you know, being smart, working in the right way, as you always do, and pre-qualifying those buyers, because we have to be very, very careful in how we conduct our business going forward now.
Yeah, so the viewings that I was on today, so these are people who have all done a virtual viewing during lockdown with the vendor. I've actually already spent an hour each, almost one-on-one, just with the vendor joining in on the viewing prior to today. So I felt like I knew them very well. And that's correct. At Power Bespoke, we're truly, you know, honing down on the viewing requests. You can only view right now in these times if you've done a virtual viewing with us. So
yeah, and I think that's really important for everybody concerned, because, you know, we're all going to be dealing with clients who've got very different views on how things are at the moment. You're going to have people at one end of the spectrum who just think, well, actually, we could just carry on as we were before. And you've got other people who are going to be extremely scared to go outside their front door, and everybody in between. And as an individual and as a business, you need to cope with all of those people and make it work for them in exactly the right way. But I'm absolutely convinced virtual tours that's the way forward now for this industry. You know, that's your first viewing on a property. That's your chance then to even do a second viewing with yourself and the seller on a three-way WhatsApp call, for argument's sake. And then after that, the next viewing is the physical one.
We've got some, we've enhanced the viewing process. More to come on our listings, actually. So the last question is actually again twofold. The first one's a little bit shorter, I guess. The first part of the last question is, in this market that we're in right now, what should I, as a vendor, be considering with regards to selling via auction? Do I qualify for my properties to sell via auction or commit to transaction? And so that's the first part of the question. Sorry. And
That was the whole.
yeah. Okay, so if we just go back to that one first now, yeah.
Okay, so market now, as I said before, I think that it's a little bit like the cork coming out of the bottle at the moment. Everybody seems to be very keen to get on and do something. I don't know any more than the next person how the market's going to go, but I do know, in the same way as there was a pent-up demand before Brexit was done, before the election, as soon as that was done and dusted last year, our December auction in London was fantastic. Our February auction was even better. There was a huge demand. The brakes were put on because of the COVID situation, and I've no doubt that we'll come out. And as a seller, if I was a seller at the moment, I would be, and I needed to sell and I wanted to sell, I would be making the most of this opportunity now, simply because after 34 years, I've seen a lot of situations, never one like this. But in all these situations, once you start coming out of a situation, that's when the smart sellers get in there and sell, because we don't know what's going to happen going forward. What we do know at the moment is that business can be transacted. There's a pent-up demand. If you get out there and you price correctly, then you've got a pretty good chance of selling. Now, depending on your circumstances as a seller, it could be best to sell by traditional auction, it could be best to use committed transaction, or it could be best private treaty. And that's the job of the skilled agents such as yourself and the companies such as Power Bespoke to give that client the best advice. If a client is looking for 100% commitment from a purchaser, auction is a good route to think about. If they just want some commitment from their purchaser, then committed transaction is a very good route to look at. If they're not too worried, or they need to find another property in which to go to, they need more flexibility in their transaction, then private treaty is probably going to be the way forward. But I think at the moment, for the next few weeks, few months, there's a real window of opportunity there for sellers. If there is any further restrictions that are imposed on us going forwards, that's going to be quite negative. I don't know any more than anybody else whether that will happen, but it's a possibility. So I understand with this type of virus that there will be a second wave of it at some point. So I think it's kind of make hay while the sun shines. That's where I'm at.
So you Network Auctions carry out 5 auctions a year, and you've already completed 2.
No, we do. Yeah, we do 6 a year. We're normally every 2 months.
Yeah.
We've had February and we had one on April the 2nd.
Yeah.
So all our auctions that would have been in the ballroom at the Westbury Hotel Mayfair are now all run online. So collective sales online. The next one is next week on the 21st of May, and the one after that is the 15th of July. So that's how we have to run our auctions now, because I can't see us being back in London for some considerable time yet.
Okay. And this is the last part of the question. So if there's an agent whose agency watching this live right now, and they don't offer this service in their business, what is the criteria that you and they'd like to get in touch with you, but before they do that, what is the criteria that you would like to know that they have met before they discuss with you, or to join? And what does it mean to join you?
To join Network Auctions, then just contact any of us. I can. I'm sure you can put the numbers up at the end, or email address for me. Very happy to talk to any agents that are looking for a very good route to market for auction for their clients. I'm a property professional. I started off as a junior estate agent in Slough 34 years ago. I made a decision a number of years ago to become an auctioneer. That's what I wanted to do. So I've seen it from both sides. But without a doubt, the most successful agents, the most professional agents, should and do offer their clients all methods of sale. And I think I said this to you a little while ago. My first boss gave me the best bit, or he gave me two really good bits of advice. The first one is, you got one of these and two of those, and when you meet your client for the first time, use those and find out exactly what their circumstances are. And it's only when you know what your client's true circumstances are that you can give them the best advice and the best way to sell their property. The other bit of advice that he gave me was, whenever you advise a client, imagine that they're a family member of yours. Could be your mum, your brother, your sister, your father, whatever. And I still use those, those two bits of advice to this day. So as far as an agent goes, who's looking to advise a client, if you've got a client that needs to sell by auction, traditional auction, or you want to explore the possibility of using committed transaction in the effective way that you have, then yeah, by all means get in touch. Be delighted to. We work with high quality agents throughout the UK. Our partner numbers at the moment, I think we're about 120. So yeah, there's always room for more.
I've really enjoyed having that, let's call it string. Is it string to my bow? Is that how you say it? In addition to offering private treaty, to be able to discuss what is right for you. I think you touched up on that. It's what's right for the client. And I always say we're in the people business, selling property, because it's addressing what their needs and not us benefiting first. So I'm pleased to have been able to have that offering, and I've seen huge success over the last few years working with you. So thank you so much for that. And
I just add one thing on that, Nicole, which is that estate agents traditionally operate within a fairly rigid geographical marketplace, and there are numerous examples that I could give of partners who we work with who, through their auction offering with us, have got clients in their geographical area, but have got properties well outside of that geographical area they would operate in. For example, just at the end of last year, we've got a partner who has a business in Aylesbury, very smart guy. A client came in who's known for many years, bought and sold properties through him for their family, their own home, son, daughter, etc. Mother lived in a flat in just outside Gravesend, and she passed away. It was a flat with a short lease. They came in because this man was their property expert, said, what should we do with it? He said, you need to auction it because of the length of lease, number one. They said, can you deal with it? He said, absolutely. And he sold that flat through us, got a full fee on it, completely out of his patch. So the thing is, once you start talking to your clients about what you do, as well as private treaty, i.e. auction, and you promote that within your business, you will be quite surprised what things potentially come out of the woodwork.
Definitely. I've experienced that with one of our recent sales as well together. So thank you so much for your time. If any agent listening in wants to get hold of Richard, please just drop me an email or text message and I'll put you in touch with Richard. Thank you so much, Richard, and for all your help over the last few years getting the deals done with me. That's
a pleasure.
Okay,
have a great weekend, and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.